Good evening, everybody. Good evening for attending this meeting. Thank you very much for coming in this cold weather. Yeah. The format of the meeting is, well, this is a hybrid meeting. We have some members and officers in attendance on virtual attendance. Members who are virtual, who are meeting remotely under regulation, do not allow members to attend virtual to be counted as present in attendance section of the minutes and their attendance will not count as attendance in relation to Section 85 of the Local Government Act 1972. Members attending virtually can speak through the chair but would not be able to vote. Speaking at the meeting, speak through the chair. That's for an orderly meeting to take place and enable accurate clerking of the proceedings. We have officers in attendance: Robert South, Strategic Director of Children's Services; Joan Dempster, Assistant Director, Children's Social Care; William Bennett, Sufficiency and Placement Lead; Richard Widdowson, Head of Fostering and Connect; Sonia Jeng, she's not. And we have Stephen Bone, Ealing Safeguarding Children Partnerships and Business Manager, and Robert McClurg Graham, Independent Chair of Ealing Safe Partnership, are on attendance online. Get onto the agenda. Any apologies for absence? No. Any urgent matters?
Not as far as I'm aware, Chair.
Thank you. Matters to be considered in private? I haven't had any. No. Declaration of interest? And minutes of the meeting on 3rd October. Are we agreed?
Agreed. Chair, my name is not there. I was present on this meeting.
You were present.
Yes, Ahmed.
Yeah. Okay, that's noted.
I've made a note of that. Thank you.
Any other matters arising? No. Okay. Do we agree with any?
Sorry, Chair. Are the minutes agreed?
Agreed. Yeah, thank you.
Chair, just agreed as long as we know that the minutes will be used, can be used again for any ideas that come out, and will be used in the future. Will be reread, and we make recommendations later.
Okay, thank you. Panel's work program. That's agenda item 6. Okay. At the moment, we have Adoption permanence progress, ASEAN and Ealing Partnership, race equality engagement. There's one other. Yes.
So I couldn't quite hear, so I hope I'm not jumping in too soon. The next meeting is quite late, isn't it? Isn't it April or something? April the 12th?
It's 15th of April.
Will the consultation exercise for reviewing children's centres be ongoing? Will it have been done by then?
That is, I was coming to that now because yesterday in our group meeting, the portfolio holders said that he's going to bring that in the next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you.
So that need to be added to the children's centres. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Just for complete accuracy, it's not actually a review with regards to children's centres. It's a review with regards to the early help provision in the borough. Children's centres is a part of that, but actually it's a broader review.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, but I think the what we were briefed last night, it was more about the children's centres. So however it's done, I don't want, it sort of dissipated. I really would like us to concentrate on the children's centre aspect. If it's possible, it's your discretion, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, just to confirm, it will very much go into children's centres in some detail because that is a significant component. But the consultation very much needs to be considered once it's undertaken in the context of early help and early intervention in the broader sense, because that's how it's actually. I suppose that's the key driver for the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. So Robert McClure-Graham would introduce this item. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. Can people hear me okay? Just check. See some nodding.
Yes,
This is fine.
Thank you for that. Okay, so thanks very much for having this on the agenda. So this is the annual report and assurance statement for the Ealing Safeguarding Children's Partnership. And before I go into it, I just wanted to put some thanks there, and hopefully you'll be able to minute it for Stephen Bourne, who's the business manager who's present here today. This has been a major feat of actually pulling this report together. It's actually involved about 8 different agencies, and within each of those agencies there are several people that have actually contributed to the report. So we're looking at about 40 to 50 people that have actually pulled this report together. So this is a report of the partnership. Now the partnership is in existence because of several acts of Parliament. So the Children's Social Work Act of 2017, the Children's Safeguarding Practice Review of 2018, the Working Together Safeguarding Children's Guidance of 2018, and I'm going to touch on some new guidance which has been published last year. So the Working Together guidance of 2023, and that's really looking forward to the forthcoming years, and I'll give you a bit of an explanation for that. So the partnership itself is made up of 3 statutory partners. So there is the council, there's also NHS North West London ICB, and there's the West Area Command Unit of the Metropolitan Police. So those are the statutory partners who commission the partnership and fund the partnership. But there are other agencies that are involved, including the NHS trusts and also the education partnership within Ealing as well as, and also some voluntary sector. So we are quite a wide partnership and an active partnership. And our intention is that we have 3 main duties. So one is to produce a business plan for the partnership to reduce the level of risk for children and improve their well-being within Ealing. Second duty is that we have to report on that plan, and this is the report of that business plan and what's been done in the last year. And also our third duty is to undertake reviews of services and partnerships where there's been a serious incident of harm to a child. So that's our statutory duties, which have been stated within those acts, and that's what we perform to do here. And so this report gives you, it's a bit of a reference document, so you'll see some repetition in this document from previous years, but that's intentional because it actually gives people information as to how we operate within Ealing around those 3 particular aims for the work that we undertake within the partnership. It's also a report on what we've achieved in the year 2003 to 2004 and gives an insight to that level of work that we do. So you'll see that each of the agencies who are involved have actually given information as to what their performance has been in promoting safeguarding for children across Ealing. And we're very grateful for those partners for the information that they've done and for their ongoing work that they're undertaking in the year and that they will continue to do within that. The priorities that we've been focusing on in this particular year cover domestic abuse and the impact that that has on children, child exploitation, whether that's through violence or through, we also have another one on sexual abuse of children. And the 4th priority is safeguarding children with mental health needs. And the report's gone through from each of the partners and given a bit of a history as to what's been done within the year 2023 to 2024. At the end of the report, there's an assurance statement from myself, and that assurance statement is to give confidence to the partners and to the external bodies that in Ealing that we have in practice, we've got a secure partnership which is undertaking its duties sufficiently. And I have to say, this is just over a year that I've been the independent chair, but also the scrutineer for the partnership and working across all partners. Part of our work has involved undertaking child safeguarding practice reviews of events which happened a couple of years ago. So with that, I've been able to look at the history of the partnership and the performance of the partnership. And what I would like to bring the scrutiny panel to make you aware of is the journey that the partnership has been on over that period of time. I think it's fair to say that 2, maybe 3 years ago, our partnership was not as strong as it is now. And I think I can report back within my insurance statement that over the last 12, 18 months, there's been a significant change in the level of partnership working. There is far more transparency and there's far more willingness amongst partners to challenge each other and to be challenged by others there around practice of safeguarding children, which is the healthy way of actually checking that our arrangements for safeguarding are in place and are functioning well. Now, I'm able to give that assurance statement because of my contact with senior members of all of the organisations and my conversations with them, also because of the work that's been undertaken and also for my first-hand experience of seeing practice undertaken within that. So I can assure this panel through the report that those systems and safeguarding systems are indeed in place within Ealing, and I'm confident that will continue moving forward. Now, looking towards the future, The latest guidance, which was published last year from the DFE, is Working Together 23. Now that will change significantly the operation of the partnership. We're moving to a different chairing position within there, and we are also moving towards a different role for myself as scrutineer within that. So the changes are that there are now 3 lead safeguarding partners. And for Ealing, that will be the Chief Exec, Tony Clements. It will be Rob Hurd, the Chief Exec of North West London ICB, and Matt Twist, the Assistant Commissioner for the Met. They'll be the 3 lead safeguarding partners. Now they will delegate officers and directors beneath them to undertake as a delegated safeguarding lead specifically for the partnership here in Ealing. And those positions will be Robert South from Children's Services, Jennifer Roy, the Chief Nurse from North West London ICB, and Jill Horsfall, the BCU Commander for the West area. Now we've agreed in our new systems that we're putting into place that chairing of the partnership will take place on a rotational basis. And I think the first meeting, Robert's going to take over the mantle, and I'll step back down into a scrutiny role. And my role will be freed up to undertake much more of an ability to roam across all services to actually give some level of assurance and some level of scrutiny around the actual practice of each of the agencies and of the partnership as a whole. And so this will be my last report that I bring here, and the future one, it will be between the 3 individuals that I've just mentioned, and they'll be able to do that report to you in future. So I'm looking forward to the new role and as a scrutineer, and I think it gives a greater degree of strength, I think, to the partnership to have that degree of independence that I will be able to support each of the 3 rotating chairs in their future work within that. So I'll stop there and just open up for any questions that people may have from reading the report, and either myself or Stephen will be able to reply to those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It is a good report. Yes. Any questions from?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Robert, and thank you very much for explaining so clearly and how the new regime is going to play out. You've mentioned there's been good cooperation between the partners. Nothing is ever perfect. You need to tell us where you think it could have been improved, where you saw gaps, and where you think there might be we can make recommendations for improvement.
I think my experience mainly comes from some of the child safeguarding practice reviews that we've undertaken, and that's a historical look back at some very tragic events that happened in 2022. And that gave me and others a bit of an insight as to what the relationship was between partners at that time, and also when we were actually doing the review. Now, what I wanted to emphasize here is that I think we're in a very, very different place in 2023-24, where this report is, and today in 2025. I think there's been a significant shift in the relationships within the partnership. And as I said, there's a real role for individuals in the partnership to represent their agency, but there's a second role they have, is where they are there as a part of the partnership itself. And that's where they have to be able to actually challenge individuals, but also the partnership around its provision for safeguarding. And I think we're in that place now. It's not something that you can just leave to chance. It needs practice, it needs oiling, and it needs people to be able to have that level of transparency and openness and a willingness to actually improve. And what I've seen over the last 12, 16 months is individuals and senior officers have strived to actually get to that place. And I think it's a very different place now than perhaps it was in 2022. And that's why I'm able to give that assurance statement here with quite a high degree of confidence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Crawford.
On page 18, strengthen collaboration between education and social care. I'd be interested to know what work has been done with housing officers, what training, we, due to the housing benefit cap, where many newcomers are not able to stay in London. Quite a lot of boroughs are housing families, I would say quite vulnerable families who've come from, and the children have seen such violence, come through such difficult situations. What work is being done to work with the parents to ensure that any assessment that they think, that the parents actually think, with regards to their children of whatever age. So what work is being done in safeguarding? Because there's so many. There are just so many different kinds of assessments that might be needed, and I'm not sure that housing officers are adequately trained.
I mean, it's the actual role of housing has always featured within safeguarding, but perhaps it hasn't featured as prominently as perhaps it should within there. I think there's been lots of work undertaking with individual partners between housing and themselves, and particularly with children's social care. Actually, I think there is a shift now that we're calling Think Family. So it's much more of a focus on working with families. I think in the past, there is one of the hurdles that we've had to overcome is that individual officers or individual social workers or individual health workers or even the police would go to a household for a single issue or a single individual, and that would be the approach. Now, what we've seen in some of the learning from our CSPRs, or our Child Safeguarding Practice Reviews, and also from our adult reviews as well, is there's a greater need for professional curiosity around what's actually going on in households. And I think that's the learning that we are seeing coming into our learning programs that we have in each of the services. And what we'd like to see moving forward on this is to have our own overarching learning and development plan, which would actually pick up on some of these issues here. Now, I think if you talk to any of the individual social workers, children's social workers and adults social workers, as well as the police and as well as our community nurses and care providers within that, if you look at the information that they can have from households, it's invaluable for us to get to some of that early intervention that Robert mentioned earlier, actually, so that we do have a cognizant understanding of actually what's actually going on in each of those households. You mentioned some other particular cohorts of individuals who have increased risk, if you like, safeguarding risk because of their immediate history and why they're actually kneeling and the type of accommodation they're in. We have to be much more aware of that so that we can actually start to target some of our resources. Resources are incredibly tight, but we do know that there are some communities and some cohorts of individuals that are at significant risk, and that gives us a chance to actually target it. Housing officers and the housing support services are really crucial in helping us actually get to that position within there. So I'm hoping that we'll see a further development within that. Within the adult board, I chair the adult safeguarding board as well. We've seen a directive come from previous ministers in the last government around appointing a responsible person for rough sleepers, for instance. Now, we hope to widen that within the adult board here, but also that's equally as relevant to the children's work as well within there. And when we're talking about domestic abuse as one of our priorities, it's where children are impacted by domestic abuse in some of those households. Are we getting the reports through? Do we intervene early enough? Have we got the right resource? Have staff got the ability to do some of those courageous conversations within these families and within these households? That's where we need to focus on more of the work. We have some excellent examples already, both in Ealing and elsewhere, but we need to make sure that these are not isolated examples, that this is just common across every service that actually operates. So I think the Think Family approach is to be welcomed. And I think what we want to see is actually a greater understanding of what's actually happening in our households, and that staff have that professional curiosity to look beyond their own remit so that they can actually identify that and have ways of actually escalating those risks when they've identified them. I hope that covers some of what you're asking.
Yes, Councillor Crawford?
I'd just be interested in knowing whether we have the resources to put in extra training for our housing officers who do an amazing job. I wouldn't like to be a housing officer. And whether we have the resources to actually monitor and to keep in touch with whoever has, been rehoused outside our borough, because it must be really, really difficult when you don't know the area. You're not close to, the shops where you can get your food. You don't have a plan of education for your children. So it's identifying the need for assessments, but then it's actually seeing, and working with, the town, or, doing partnership working wherever they've been sent to. I imagine it's really difficult thing to do, but it is having that sort of like corporate parenting responsibility when we send our young people and the families outside the borough.
Would you
Rob,
would you like to?
Rob, would you like me to maybe come in on that question?
Yes, that'd be fine, Robert. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Crawford. I think the first point, in terms of, Rob could cover this, and with Steve, and we do offer training across the partnership, and try to encourage joint training. So we do have housing officers attending training with regards to safeguarding. And I think it's really important that I emphasise that the report here is very much focused on the safeguarding partnership. So the safeguarding activity in relation to children and families. And obviously that often children don't just pitch up as having a safeguarding challenge within their family. We may know children before in the early help space, the universal space, and also as children in need. But what's really important is that we do provide support, advice and information to children and families at the earliest possible juncture. But you asked about funding, Councillor. We are funded, but we are funded to meet certain universal, preventative and statutory obligations. And so if a family require housing, obviously that housing is assessed and considered by local authorities under the relevant housing legislation. I won't speak to that here because you'll find me wanting, because I'm not a director of housing, obviously, but children's services will do likewise using the core primary legislation, which I've referred to previously here, which is the 1989 Children Act. And section 47 of that legislation covers safeguarding. So within those, the auspices of that piece of legislation and the particular legislation, elements of the legislation as they refer to safeguarding, is within that auspices that we will assess families. Now, if a family is placed in another part of the region or the country, in fact, the safeguarding legislation or the children's legislation, it would then fall to the local authority where the children live, if there is still a safeguarding issue, to actually manage that child's plan if they were deemed to be at risk of significant harm that had resulted in them being placed on a plan. That's how that would work. If they were not deemed to be at risk of significant harm and they were not subject to a plan, then there would be no duty for a local authority to intervene in those circumstances. But as a local authority, where children are placed in other boroughs, just as local authorities do with Ealing, if there is a concern about a child, then we would notify that local authority. And in fact, under the safeguarding protocols, if a child is placed in our borough and is subject to a child protection plan, the local authority placing the child, or where the child emanates from, will notify us in Ealing of that, and we will pick up responsibility for that child. And likewise happens if we have a child move from Ealing into another borough. And it's just a way of ensuring that we have resources, local resources, to meet the needs of children. I hope I explained that clearly enough. It's just about the practicalities in terms of managing that. But for most children, they won't be subject to a child protection plan. We have over 80,000 children in the borough, and currently, John, we have how many children subject to child protection plans? It's under.
It's around 283.
Yeah, so it's under 300 children.
Mr. McLaughlin, would you like to add anything else to that?
Just one of the strengths of the Working Together 23, which kind of answers some of Councillor Crawford's concerns as well, is the promotion of education within the role of safeguarding. Now, Ealing has for quite some years had a very successful education partnership across its schools. So the new legislation, or the new guidance, Working Together 23, has actually promoted that role. I have to say, at the beginning of the year, we were talking about education being the fourth partner. They've somehow rolled back a little bit from that, but I think here in Ealing, we would indeed want them to be a very significant partner within the partnership, promoting safeguarding for that. We have mechanisms already in place to secure that, and there is a lot of involvement already. So I think we could quite easily take off that demand from the DFE that we have involvement of our education partners. I think one area perhaps we don't do is actually covering some of the independent sector in education. So that's an area that we'd have to perhaps look at a bit more closely over the forthcoming year to make sure we can cover that area as well.
Thank you. As you mentioned domestic violence, do you have a breakdown in towns, or it's just the whole borough as one?
We've got the data that we have, I think, is for the whole borough, but I think probably we could break it down a little bit further than that, down to wards, I would have thought, because of the postcodes that we could do within there. But at the present time, that's not appearing in our reports here at the current time.
Thank you. I think that we can come up with a breakdown in ward by ward. Yes, thank you. Sure.
I've just conferred with Joanne, and that's something that we believe that we can review and bring back here in terms of the ward by ward data or town data.
Thank you very much. Thank you. No other questions? No? Okay. Just thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks very much for having us here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Goodbye now.
Bye-bye. All right. The next we have is item 8. Care options for children and social care. Yeah, William Bennett, Head of Service and Sufficiency, will present this report.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, so in my report, I've done an overview effectively of
placements options for children in care. And I've given a bit of sort of a national context and then gone on to local context and then what our strategy is to meet the needs of our children in care population. To start with, I think it's important just to set out that every local authority in the country has a duty under Section 22G of the Children Act to ensure that there's sufficient accommodation for our children in care and that we have the right types of placements to meet the needs of our children. But within that act, it does set out that the preference should be for the placements to be within the local authority. And obviously, we always endeavour to keep children close to home. That is increasingly difficult within sort of the national context and the sufficiency difficulties that are happening at the current time. So you might be aware that there's been a lot of national coverage regarding this issue. And I know that recently the government have said that they really want to address some of the difficulties in the wider market. So there was there's been two recent key reports. So the Competitions and Markets Authority did a report in 2022, and more recently a consultancy called Empower did a report around the kind of the national context. Basically, there's an imbalance of supply and demand. So nationally, there's a trend where the children in care population is increasing, and it's becoming more and more difficult to have a range of placements that meet their needs. And what we've seen as a general theme is that children's presentations are becoming more complex, and that's because of a range of different issues. And I think there's an element of COVID for that. There's an element of social media and the impact and the longevity that's had. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to meet the range of different needs that arise. What we have seen as well is because of the imbalance between supply and demand, particularly on external placements, you're seeing that the costs are rising exponentially. And that's what the government has recently been discussing around how they want to crack down on that. And there's various methodologies that they're seeking to introduce. I'm happy to say that it's interesting seeing that from a national context, because the kind of things that they've been saying is we have been addressing that already through some of the systems that we've been putting in place and the way that we're trying to manage the market and trying to get the best value for our children. I think a really important part to consider is the particular difficulty around foster placement. So when children need to come into care, I'll set this out a bit later, but the preference is always for them to stay with family, but if not to be with in-house carers, and that means that they'll be local to us and that we'll have a better control and be able to provide better support to those placements. There's a real difficulty in recruiting and retaining foster carers, and that is a national issue. And what we've seen over the last few years is a continued decrease in local authority foster carers. However, the independent fostering agencies, which are the external private organisation, have seen relatively stable numbers in terms of their carers. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Historically, it's about a better offer from private organisations, but it's also something around more sophisticated marketing effectively and really getting people in. So that's another area as part of the work we've really been focusing on, is about our offer to foster carers and about getting our message out there and connecting with people. And I think that's, it really chimes obviously with our council kind of objectives in terms of connected community. So it's a real key priority area, and I know Robert's very passionate about the area of fostering. So yeah, in terms of Ealing, as of today, I think we have 272 children in care. 21 of those children are unaccompanied asylum seekers, which accounts for 8% of our children in care population. Currently, our placement mix, so to speak, isn't where we would want it to be in terms of we have a higher number of children in external independent fostering agency placements and a lower number in in-house placements. And that's why we're really looking to enhance our in-house capacity so that when we do need to bring a child into care and they can't stay with their families, we can have an in-house placement. So there's ongoing work around that. So as I was saying before, our strategy is very clear that the best way to manage our sufficiency and make sure our children are safe is to, when it's safe and appropriate to do so, is that they remain at home with their parents. When that isn't possible, we will look at kinship placements, and I'll talk in my next report about our kinship strategy. And And then when that's not possible, it's an in-house foster placement. And then when that's not possible, it would be a residential placement. Now, we don't want to place our children in residential settings, but unfortunately for some children, because of the complexity of their need, they need that level of support to keep them safe and meet their holistic needs. Now, we have a low number of children in residential settings. We have around 25 children, I believe, currently in residential setting, which is relatively low. However, our aspiration would be to not have any children in residential if that was possible. But realistically, especially children with profound disabilities, some of them do need that level of care and support. And especially the children with those enduring disabilities, they will probably need that kind of support for the rest of their lives. In terms of our in-house fostering capacity, so we're really clear that we want to increase our capacity and increase our number of carers. And we have been doing a lot of work within the service to really try and bolster our numbers. So there's been a range of different things. And the main thing, I suppose, really was looking at what our offer to foster carers was. And so what we did last year, the year before now, we did some sprint activity to get feedback from foster carers to understand what their experience was and what they wanted. And then also I undertook quite a range of benchmarking with our other local authorities and then understanding the market in terms of fostering. And we put together a new and refreshed offer for our foster carers, and it was approved recently in October Cabinet. So we've an uplift in fee, and we've some certain other incentives, such as for certain carers in certain situations, council tax exemption. So there was a suite of incentives. So now we're in a competitive place, certainly, and we're working closely with some digital partners and our community partners about getting that message out there. There's some quite exciting and sophisticated work going on around that, and I'm really hopeful that we're going to have a real increase. We have already seen some really good activity, and we've got, I think, currently 10 assessments underway for full-time carers, which is brilliant. And we've got another 2 that should be coming through. So this year we're going to start to see a real increase in our capacity, and I'm hopeful that we can go even further. So yeah, it's really exciting times. In terms of some other exciting bits, we've got a partnership with an organisation called Foster Now. So that's a new innovative scheme whereby they're focused on recruiting weekend foster carers. So they would provide just foster care for children on a weekend, maybe once a month. And that attracts a different cohort of people that might not have previously thought they could foster, because there's less of a commitment. But what that means is that you can actually match children to specific carers who might share particular interests. So that would be really like an enriching experience for both the child and the carer, and also by proxy then provide support to their longer term placement by giving some, planned break for everybody. So it should theoretically be a win-win situation. So that's a completely new and innovative scheme, and we're basically the West London partner for that. So we're really excited about that. The other thing to add is in terms of the fostering, we are part of now a regional hub with 7 other boroughs. And what that is they manage the initial inquiry stage of when foster carers are interested. And what we've done is we pooled resources in terms of our digital marketing, and we've branded as Foster West London, which increases our reach, and we get economies of scale through our digital space. And to me, that this is the real opportunity of where we've kind of left behind. We've been behind in terms of the independent fostering agencies, because they've been really sophisticated and really aggressive in terms of their digital marketing and their reach. So what we need to do is we need to get more sophisticated ourselves and combat that. And what we're seeing now, I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but what we're seeing now is in the digital space is we're actually competing really well with the independent fostering agencies. And there are certain different strategies that you use in terms of organic search and then identifying, profiling people that are more likely to foster. A little bit like when you're on shopping and you look at a handbag, and then for the next 2 weeks, you get things flashing up about handbags. We've got kind of the same strategy around foster carers in our area. So now we've got more content going out that's specifically targeted at those groups. So yeah, and the other really important thing I think to add as well is that we will soon be launching our first Mockingbird constellation. Mockingbird is a national program where effectively you create an extended family around children. So you have a home hub carer who effectively is maybe like seen as a granny or an auntie, and then you would go around to their house every month, and then that provides that kind of wraparound support and that family type feel. This is a national project. It's been rolled out in many boroughs, and we had great success in terms of placement stability and enriching the lives of children. And so we will be launching our first constellations. That's what they call it, a constellation, in next month. So that's really exciting. To move on to sort of external placements, just an update around that. So when we can't place with our in-house carers, we have to go to external providers. We would always want to place with the foster agencies first. So we're part of something called the London Commissioning Alliance, and we're part of a DPV, so a dynamic purchasing vehicle, whereby they basically sign up providers and they do all the due diligence, and so that we know that they're really good providers, and then they regulate the costs of those providers and they sign into the contract. Now, around 50% of our placements externally are through the DPV and through those agreed contracts, but sometimes the agencies don't want to sign up to that because of their previous imbalance in the supply and the demand of the market, and we need to go out and spot purchase placements. So what we're doing is when we do need to do that, we've implemented a new system whereby every week, and Richard chairs the meeting, we systematically review those placements to make sure that they're meeting the needs of our children and that we're getting the value for what we've actually commissioned. And that's the same for the residential placements as well. So the residential placements are very costly, and so we need to be really robust in our monitoring around those placements. And if a provider says that they are providing a service or additional one-to-one support, we need to be assured that they are providing that. And then we need to assure ourselves that we scale back that support if that child doesn't need that as quickly as possible, both in the interest of the child and also to make sure that we're not spending unnecessary money on placements. Another key aspect around the external placements as well, and children with more complex profiles, is we're really developing our relationship with the ICB, the Integrated Care Board, so our health partners, and we've had some recent good progress with our partners around our joint commissioning arrangements and about drawing upon their expertise in when they have certain health conditions or mental health presentation, and then making sure that we're pooling our resources and our expertise to get the best outcomes for our children. In terms of care leavers, Carol Yates is the head of service for care leavers. She isn't with us today. I think we're really fortunate to have Carol. She's very committed, and we've recently had a wonderful event of our care leaver takeover day. I don't know, you might have seen that. So we've got 442, I think, care leavers currently open to the service. We're really committed to supporting our care leavers, and that was recognised through recently. We've acknowledged care leaver status as a protected characteristic. We're doing a range of activity to make sure that care leavers, we've got the right support at the right time for them. So a number of our care leavers will live in semi-independent accommodation, but at any one time, a number of those care leavers may be ready to move into their own independent accommodation. So what we're doing is working with a lot of collaboration internally within the council to try and increase our stock to make sure that we move care leavers on to the right support, to the right placements at the right time. Carol has similar systems about monitoring placements and the levels of support for care leavers to making sure that they're proportionate to their needs. Yeah, so I mean, and I ended off there with like the financial implications, and I put this in my report that went to Cabinet back in October. That the cost of residential placements is really high, and so obviously, as I said before, we always want our children to live in a family setting. And if we can continue the work that we're already on the way with and try and step down some of those children from residential placements to fostering placements, it will really be beneficial, mainly for the children, but also for the local authority in terms of the financial aspect, because they are significantly cheaper than a residential placement.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Crawford, you have a question?
Looked after children last year in one of the meetings. It was really exciting to see how council was supporting young people in attending gyms, plus a mate to go with. And I thought that was absolutely fantastic. So with the fostering, and you talked about weekends, I would call that respite, but let's quibble about words. But what are we doing, or are we doing anything in linking the young person, the foster carer, obviously of the child or young person's choice, into actually taking up sport, attending sport? Because I've always felt that sport, whatever your ability is, there's usually a way of actually getting involved. And for heaven's sake, there's amazing work being done with most football trusts in engaging with the local community. So to me, it seems quite, quite economical in actually finding out what the young person's football team is, and making sure that a foster carer can take, it's paid for basically. And I'm sure that would be an excellent bonding tool and to sustain that relationship. Because if you've got something of real interest, like football, cricket, whatever, that's the weekend taken care of almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can we afford to? Are we doing anything like that?
So I think each child, obviously, they have their own social worker and they have their own plan, which sets out how we're going to meet their holistic needs. And a part of that, you're quite right, is about what are their interests, what are they engaged in, what do they want to do, and we would always make sure that we promote that. Absolutely, absolutely. And we would encourage the foster carers, and this comes back to the increase in our fostering capacity with local carers. Because if we can have a range of carers that have different interests and different and activities, we can then better match our children with carers that would be have those similar interests. Whilst the carer would always support a child to do the activity, football or the gym or what have you, if you have that connection and that shared interest, then it really can explode. And I remember an example of my career when I matched a child who was in residential, but they had an absolute passion for gymnastics, and we happened to recruit a foster carer who was an ex-Olympic gymnast, and it was just absolutely incredible that shared interest that they had and how positive it was for her, and she had an amazing time, and it was absolutely wonderful. So it just yes is the answer, but it again highlights how important it is that we really focus on increasing our capacity for foster carers.
Yeah, John Dempster.
Thank you, Councillor. I just want to come in off the back of William's answer to the question. The idea of developing a Mockingbird project within our fostering space is that we've got what's called a constellation of carers around one lead hub carer, and that is a community of carers. So we are trying to develop small groups of carers that work together to care for the children within their group. So they will share their skills, their knowledge, their experience, their time for all of the children within that Mockingbird group of foster carers. So we will be able to maximise access to people's skills and abilities to give the children what they need. And that's the idea of Mockingbirds.
I should briefly add as well, I think Ealing Council has got strong links with Brentford Football Club and obviously in the Premier League. I think each, as you mentioned, football club, at least in the Football League, will have a community trust. And I think we've got strong links with our early help offer. And I think there's opportunities to grow. So we're looking at doing a destination fair, for example, Carl Yates, to help those young people, care leavers who can't find employment training opportunities. And I think there's an opportunity there to link, maybe get and use their space. And they offer things like for young people to be part of panels to improve the community, that sort of thing. So I think we've already got that, but you're right in saying that's one in the borough that we have to grow. And obviously I'm passionate about football as well. And I think there's kind of other opportunities, but in other sports, but we're certainly doing that. And I think Brentford's more of an opportunity to grow that link.
Councillor Gallant?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, William, for your report, as always. I've got a question about the hub, the West London hub. Is there a lead borough there, or is it just a kind of or just a sort of general community? This is a strange question. Does it have what's its standing? Does it have any sort of grant seeking possibilities? Could that, because I mean, you put people together, they have a bigger force. And the final question is, where sport's been mentioned, I would mention music. And can we make use of the Ealing Music Service as a good resource to support your work?
So in terms of the hub, you're right. There is a host authority. So Hammersmith and Fulham are the host authority, the hub, and then they have there are dedicated people that work within that, and there's a program lead. In terms of the funding, it is part funded by the DfE. And we have recently, so it was initially a pilot scheme, and we've recently committed to extending that pilot because we're seeing the benefit of that. In terms of the music, absolutely. Rich, do you know much? Have we linked in with Ealing?
No, we're not, but it's probably part of.
Maybe we are.
It's probably part of the work that we want to do, both in terms of marketing and making links to grow our foster carer kind of cohort. But I think the point that Councillor Crawford made about, you know, whatever that recreation is for a child, like how we build them and strengthen those links. And as you say, it's like co-production, doing things together that they enjoy and taking them along. So I think we have a marketing officer now that helps us and is making those links, for instance, events to attract foster carers, but more from a delivery perspective and supporting young people and children. I think there's so many opportunities to grow that, and whether that's art, music, drama, sports, any kind of positive recreation, we need to do that, because that's the link. And especially the children that are in residential care, and the panel that William mentioned, I chair that every week, and one of the first questions you'll ask is, what is this child's interest? And if we've got a hook there, that we're trying to utilize that, as well as helping them sort of work on their behaviour, so that if we are then matching with an in-house carer or an independent foster carer, it's about growing that and growing that interest together. So yeah, but there's definitely scope for that.
Joe, is this a recommendation that we could develop into as we're going along? And
yes, we can.
May I come in on the music school front? But just to say that I think that the music school is connected indirectly through the virtual school. So the virtual school puts the plans together and has those connections with the music school. So it's not directly to the music school. It's by each child who is in care will have a what's called a personal education plan, which is overseen by a teacher within the virtual school, and they will look at all resources that are available to aid the education and also just the extracurricular activities of the child. And that includes links that we have with a number of schools in the independent sector who provide free services to children in care in Ealing. But I think the point you make, Councillor, is really important. We could probably strengthen that, and I think that's certainly something we can look at exploring.
Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Kingston, have a question?
Yes, unfortunately, playing devil's advocate here. When you're talking about the once a month carers, in some ways, is it potentially, could that be disruptive though, if there has been a child who's maybe going through a particularly difficult period and it's maybe puts them out of sync?
So I think in terms of that, we would only put forward children where it wouldn't be disruptive to them and it would be an enriching experience for them. And I think you're right. For some children, it might not be appropriate, and they'd be better off with the continuity of one carer and not going to a different environment. But I think for a lot of children, having a different experience will be really beneficial. So yeah, you're right. Yeah, but we would do it on a child by child basis.
And if I can just say on that development, it's a piece of innovation. So if we're really honest, we don't know what the impact will be. That's something we want to test, but we want to bring more innovation in, because what we do know nationally is that outcomes for children in care nationally are very poor. So what we think is that we've got to try more pilot innovations to improve and bring these children who've often had some terrible experiences and to really help them. And I think a little, like I would think with my own daughter, she really benefits from spending time with her auntie. You know, sometimes we can't prize her away because her auntie fulfills a different role to the parents, and it's really positive. And even friends, you know, my wife was working late tonight, I'm working late, so she went to a friend's house, and she's probably quite happy because she's probably going to get something better to eat than if we were at home with her. But I think all things are options. The only thing that I wouldn't consider is really giving them a season ticket for Tottenham Hotspurs.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions? No. I have just one question on your recruitment. I know it's you mentioned it's getting better. What sort of media are you using to publicize these vacancies on foster parents?
Okay, so there's a range of different outlets. So, well, first of all, through our own council website. Then we've got a range of targeted sort of email marketing to local partners in faith groups, in education partners. So that's all going out directly to the connections that we already have. Then we have online activity in terms of organic search. So when you search on Google, they will come up with fostering. Well, that's massively improved. Then you've got paid search, where you have actual, like you buy AdWords from Google and then that comes up. And then you've got when you profile people on their online activity. And so we're working with a digital agency that specialises in this. So when there's any interest around fostering, then it can target them. And then we've got a few now, individual videos of foster carers, which they will then flash up and they will talk about their experience of being foster carers. So we'll have things going out on Facebook, we've got some TikTok, we've got stuff on X. So we're really doing the whole kind of social media platforms. What we'll be seeing this year come in is we'll be doing targeted events with particular parts of the community. And thinking about both our sort of events calendar and cultural calendar, and then linking fostering in with those respective events. So in February, we've got Children's Mental Health Week coming up. So we've just recorded an interview with one of our in-house CAMS psychologists, and then she'll be talking about the work that she does to support foster carers in Ealing, and then that will then go out live around that week, so it ties in to getting interest, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No, that's just.
Okay, so this is just an update in terms of where we are in terms of our kinship strategy. So maybe aware that the government has recently published their national kinship strategy, and that built upon some of the things that they set out in the previous paper, Stable Homes Built on Love, in 2023. So the government's committed some investment into kinship care. We know that, like, globally, I'll put this in the report, that actually they've estimated that, in the United Kingdom, I should say, that there's around 200,000 children who cannot live with their parents and they're in some form of kinship arrangement, and that globally is probably the biggest form of alternative care arrangements for children. In terms of kinship care, just to, I suppose, set it out, there are different types of kinship care. So there can be informal kinship care when there's a temporary arrangement with a family friend, kinship care for a child arrangement order, when actually a family member or another part or a friend has an actual child arrangement order, so has legal responsibilities. You can then have a special guardianship order, which is a similar type legal responsibility where the carer can look after the children and exercise PR. And then you have kinship foster carers. So kinship foster carers will fall under the same regulations and support as in-house foster carers. So we as we've said before, like, we're very committed to keeping children at home with their parents where possible. And when that's not possible, the next best thing is a kinship arrangement, so a family member or a friend or somebody that is connected to that child. Now, there's lots of different research out there, but we know that children, when we can keep them within kinship arrangements, do have better outcomes than children that go into kind of foster placement or residential placements. And there's various studies around that more stability in terms of less moves, higher employment later in life, better kind of social and emotional well-beings. Obviously, they're more likely to be kept with their siblings and feel loved and supported. So it's incumbent upon us to do everything we can to support our kinship carers. And we had plans underway, well underway in terms of supporting kinship carers. And I suppose it's important to say that the kinship foster carers in Ealing will benefit in the same way from the range and suite of incentives and improvements that we've made to the fostering service, because they can access all of that same support and they'll get the same uplifts and the same rights. We in terms of our practice, in terms of identifying family members that can support children, one of the key things that we have changed within the service is a mechanism called family group conferences. So when there are concerns around a child at home, we would hold a family group conference to explore what the networks of support are within that family and how, in the first instance, the wider family can support the child to remain at home. And then when they are unable to remain at home, that helps to facilitate and identify who those carers may be. And what we're doing is we're trying to have those meetings much earlier on in stage in the service. So at the first point, if there are concerns, our aim is to get those meetings together to identify the networks of support. What we've seen in Ealing is, which is positive, in March, I've done the comparison between March 23 and October 24. We've seen kinship placements increase from 25 to 35, which shows that it's on the right track in terms of what our target is to do, which is enhance and increase our kinship arrangements rather than rely on external placements. In terms of the government, in the strategy, they had like 5 key outcomes that they want to achieve through the kinship strategy. So the first one was children in kinship care are supported to achieve better outcomes. So I've mentioned before that in Ealing, our kinship carers benefit from the improvements that we've made to our fostering service, the kinship foster carers, so they can access support from our in-house psychology support service. We've got a few psychologists that do like groups with foster carers, and then in specific circumstances can do direct work with families to support them. Special guardians are now able to access the post-adoption support fund, which is a fund that provides specialist therapeutic interventions, which is really positive. And the second objective was around kinship carers to receive more support. And I was talking before about the range of incentives that we've put in place. And they can also, kinship foster carers can also access all of the training and support offer that we have, which is really positive. The third objective was for kinship families to feel more empowered. So I think a sense of that is like listening to the voice of kinship carers, and we do that through our support groups. We do that through our ongoing feedback through our support groups and our reviews. And we're also seeking to appoint a kinship carer ambassador who can help to elevate the voice of kinship carers within the local authority, and that's something we'll be doing this year. The fourth objective was that kinship families are understood. And so what we think is really important is that we develop a really clear framework and policy guidance for our kinship carers specific to Ealing, and we were doing that this year. In terms of the fifth objective was to engage family networks earlier and overcoming barriers to them getting support. And that's where it ties in around what I was talking about, moving those family group conferences to an earlier stage so we can hear their voices and involve them in the planning for children right at the start of our interventions. So yeah, so this year we will have our own. We are developing our strategy, and as part of that, as I mentioned before, with the foster carers, when we did sprint activity, we will be doing sprint activity specifically with kinship carers, so that we can co-produce that strategy. So yeah, very much us.
Of course.
Thank you very much. I've just got a question about if you wind it back to the early phases when this kind of care will be viewed, people are going to be key figures in that assessment, aren't they, in the very early phase? So that's just an interesting way of increasing and empowering that process.
Well, yeah, I think this is very much a direction of travel now in terms of social work practice, and it's interesting because it really chimes, I think, with our, as I was talking earlier, about our vision of connected communities. And it's about what are the resources within a child's network that can support them without being necessarily dependent on other things. So sometimes that's the best form of support that you can get. It might be, and when you talk about kinship and connected people, it doesn't necessarily have to be like a family member. It could be somebody that has a really important role in that child's life. It might be a former teaching assistant. It might be the football coach. It could be anyone. And obviously, like if that person was to become a carer, there's a lot of due diligence that you need to go through, and assessments and background checks, etc. But it's about opening up those possibilities for those child, isn't it? And so that's something we are really focused on now.
Those are incredibly important points. I think the other point is that if you think about traditionally with concepts such as adoption, for some communities, adoption isn't something that has naturally sits well within the culture and the outlook, whereas the idea of a broader kinship offer works really well. And when we look at our wider communities across Ealing, I think that this mix in terms of the offer, it opens up the opportunities, and it gives people an opportunity to have a conversation about, yes, taking on responsibility and maybe even taking legal responsibility, but the parental responsibility being shared with a parent, that's one option, or the parent remaining in the life, the birth parent remaining in the life of their child, and that being managed with the family. And I think that's really important when thinking about cultural norms, values, and how we can keep families keep together, and also most importantly help the child maintain that positive identity about their cultural value and worth, and actually grow that in a very positive way.
Then Councillor Kwanzaa.
Actually, my question follows on quite well from that. This is obviously an Ealing got quite a large BAME community. What would be the situation if the kinship, if they wanted to maybe send a child abroad? Would that be something to encourage, or how can we even follow up? Like, is it once they leave the country, that's, wouldn't say.
It does happen. I think there's examples recently. I think it ties in about doing things as early as possible and looking at the least disruption for that child. If they can remain in the UK with a viable family member or someone significant in their network, you'd look at that because they maintain their links with their birth family closer if it's safe to do so, and they're not going to be moving schools if they're in education. But where you look wider at kin, and we know in terms of a diverse population and certain countries where that population are in Ealing, we have then international elements where it varies from country to country around the immigration law about who can practice there, but you might commission an independent social worker to assess in that country and advise the British court on what to do. But you do have to think very carefully about the sort of socioeconomic and kind of what's happening globally for that particular country. You also thinking about immigration, like some countries can't have dual nationality, so you're thinking about their prospects going forward. So each country specific, but you have children and families across borders that advise us, and we'll be part of that, and we'll seek advice. And in each of these that we've done in the last year, we'll like get specialist legal advice and in-country advice from an expert as well, to sort of present the best, if we're in that arena for the court, to say, having considered all the options, this is viable. And then it's about the right transition plan and what the social worker and those involved and the foster carer, if that's applicable, taking that child and making sure that they settle effectively. Yeah, but it's very careful planning and consideration and relying on experts to inform us so that we're making the best decision in those cases.
Yeah, John?
Can I just comment on that point? Just to say that, and obviously the wishes and feelings of the child or children are absolutely paramount in that decision making as well. I think that's really, really important, because there may be, you know, a grandmother in another country the child's very close to, has had that frequent contact with, really aware of, they have a close bond, etc. Much easier to do. If the child is not aware, then as Richard was saying, much more thorough assessment. And sometimes, in fact, we even have family members who will come to the UK and spend some time with the child, and that will form part of the assessment. So it's not, you know, it's a very very thorough process.
We can and do assess kinship carers abroad where we can, and it's safe to do so. So that's something that Ealing does well, I think, very inclusive and open to pursuing family members who might be living in a different country. The paper talks about the increase in kinship care arrangements for our current numbers of children who are in care. But if we look at the outcomes for our children in care who've exited care and are no longer looked after by Ealing Authority, in the last 6 months, 67% of children who exited care either go home or they go to family members under different orders to be cared for permanently within their family networks. So we're doing this consistently. That statistic gives you the breakdown of children who've come out of the care of the local authority in the last 6 months. It's been like that for some time.
Thank you. Councillor Kwanzaa.
Thank you, Chair. It's more of a supportive statement that I'm really glad to see that kinship care has been taken seriously and there are strategies and support systems in place to understand its benefits. I'm talking from somebody who was both fostered in the UK and in Ghana, and the adage of it takes a village to raise a child rings true. And so, Robert, when you said that it's important to hear children's voices, people don't understand that the village in Africa includes children. It's very much important, just as the elders are very much important. There's always been in the past a tendency to have some kind of taboo attitude towards extended families and the links that the benefits they have on supporting young people who have been separated from their natural environments. You know, separation causes trauma, not post-traumatic stress syndrome, ongoing stress syndrome that's not clearly understood. So anything that's going to help bring young people who've been in the care system, who've actually had the opportunity to connect with families, significant others, blood ties, it's a great thing, I can assure you. So it's good to hear we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Any comment from it? No.
I completely agree. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? No. I've only got one question on how robust is our system? This comes from this Sarah Sharif case. What happened? It's the father who killed the child. How robust is our system in vetting this kinship? Because it was the father, and when we are assessing someone, how are we doing with that?
What I would say, Councillor, I wouldn't want to comment on that case specifically, but what I would just like to highlight is that the local authority is responsible for assessments, and I think we have a thorough process. We have a really rigorous agency decision maker who is sat next to me here on my left, and she thoroughly considers all of the information and evidence in terms of decision making, in terms of assessments, approving assessments or rejecting them indeed for carers. But fundamentally, in many cases, the decisions are ultimately made within family proceeding courts. So it will be the responsibility of a judge who will hear all of the information from the parties within the court, and that will often include a children's guardian who is appointed to very specifically represent the interests independently of the child or children.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll present this report. So my colleague Sonia Jenkins was appointed as the service manager for the fostering service, which also includes kinship. She came in August. She's got experience of both fostering and adoption, and I joined in April last year. And we both sort of noticed an area of improvement, and I'll speak to that. But I'll just try and give you some context to the specific teams, what exists already across the rest of the statutory offer, and to build on that and grow that so that our grip increases in terms of fostering. And as you've heard, there's lots of recruitment activity to grow our capacity of foster carers. And that's why what I'm going to talk about is so important, because if we've got lots of foster carers, it's important that the support that we give to them and the supervision and the visits that we do in supporting our carers will directly impact and benefit our young people. So the background really is that if you think about such as the front door or our assessment teams, we have really robust and strong sort of digital monitoring tools that inform us as managers and social workers. So for instance, we can see a snapshot, what we call a dashboard for any key performance indicator. So Robert mentioned their sort of statutory assessments. You can tell when that started, who that is allocated to, how many days it's taken, and the daily activity, weekly activity for managers is to have oversight of that. And it gives us grip and understanding so that we're not letting families drift or things are not getting done. But in the fostering support space, so that is once a foster care is being recruited and supported by a social worker themselves in their own right, they need to have regular supervision. So they're meeting with their social worker for them and talking about the child that they support, what their needs might be. And we need systems that tell us that that's happening on a regular basis, which then also informs their annual reviews, where a panel, independent panel, will look at the quality of the support they're providing, who they're approved for, and that sort of thing. But if we don't have the systems behind that, it's much harder to then manually look at your 50+ carers and go through and think, okay, have we done that? You can do that now, but it's not as sophisticated as what exists in the other areas. And we also have business objects, which alongside a dashboard sort of thing, we can be sent emails on an automated basis. So weekly as a manager, you're looking at any outliers or things you're looking ahead to in terms of what you need to get done. And it ties in on both sides. So what we're trying to do is we use Mosaic as a recording system, and then we use Power BI as a council, but specifically to children's services, is to have that offer for fostering and eventually grow that into the kinship space, and also our permanence tracking, so where we're tracking children, where they want to go in terms of a permanent home. And with fostering, traditionally, we haven't had that grip and that oversight. So what Sonia's doing with our colleagues in the development side of ICT is building these dashboards. And we've had feedback this week, for instance, in terms of the key ones that I'll go into around visits, that we can track that those are being done. But underneath that that's one thing. You have to have your sort of management setup and systems that complement that. And that's what myself and Sonia have set up. So they'll have weekly data performance meetings where the staff, the social workers and the managers will meet together. There'll be separate meetings for the managers to look at these sorts of issues and be across the different areas that we're tracking. And then myself, my 5 teams, which is inclusive of the fostering support team as one of those, will meet with me for 30 minutes on a Thursday afternoon, and we'll go through those key performance indicators. Now it's very much a labour intensive, more sort of us looking at the data and going through each sort of foster carer on the system, whereas we will be able to look very quickly with these dashboards and say, okay, these visits have all been done this month, these haven't, these are upcoming, and really improve our performance and grip in that area. And it mentions the things, I kind of said a few of those, but really we want to be looking at our reviews of households. An area of improvement is really doing unannounced visits as well. So it's not just that you're fulfilling your statutory requirements in visits every month or whatever period is set, it's that we're going unannounced. And some carers, for good reasons, will be on hold. So they might have had a bereavement, they might have had a significant family incident, let's say, where they've asked us to say, I can't foster for now. But to fulfill our statutory requirements while ever they're on our books, we have to visit unannounced and check what's happening, run our checks regularly in terms of any change in circumstance. And again, I think that's an area for improvement. But if we have these on the dashboards, we can check, have we done an unannounced recently at any sort of parameter that we set, and we will do that. And it's the same for tracking annual reviews. You have to do that on a yearly basis. There's an independent fostering IRO that will look at that and work with us. And if you don't have the systems behind it and then the meetings, you can't do that. So really it's about me and Sonia joining together, improving the background of the ICT suite that we've got to be able to look at a snapshot, but then having the sort of performance meetings that drive that. The better we support our foster carers and the better grip we have, and if any emerging safeguarding concern or anything like that is not spotted by having this grip, you know, that's what we're trying to do. So it's growing that in tandem and using the fostering support as the sort of bedrock and doing that, and then emulating that into the kinship space, because we've got a full kinship team that assesses the prospective kinship carers. And then for any that remain with us, we are also, they will have a supervising social worker in the fostering support team that will support them as kinship carers, both in a care proceedings, but if they foster long term as a kinship arrangement, we need to have oversight there as well. So it was to show and demonstrate to the Scrutiny Committee that we're trying to enhance the way we sort of have oversight. And it sort of it links to what Ofsted, you know, there are lots of strengths, but they want us to grow at pace the capacity of foster carers we have and the placement options, which much of what William's spoken about. But in delivering that service, and especially if we grow the amount of carers we have, we've got to offer a really quality support offer that we understand. So it's just to illuminate that here, really.
Thank you. Sorry, you make unannounced visit when they're not fostering, they're not actually fostering.
I mean, we could do it anytime, and we should be doing that. So particularly for our carers that have children in their care, we should be visiting on a regular basis to support that foster carer. And on the children's social worker side, they'd be doing both announced and unannounced visits. But it's really important that if a carer's on hold and not providing that service at that time, that we're still going into that home. Who's in that home? What are they dealing with at the moment? How can we help them resume fostering when that's done? But I think without the systems behind it, it's harder to track, oh, when did we do that visit? You can do it manually by looking on case notes, but you really need the systems to just, like any business or any one who's got managerial and leadership grip, to have that an easy glance to do that, which we have very strongly in other areas of the children's social care sort of arena.
Yeah, Councillor Glant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Rich. Thank you very much. Yeah. So you're talking about an enhancement of your ICT, enhancement of the dashboard. Are there any cost or procurement issues? Have you got the systems in place already?
We've got the Mosaic license, which is enhanced all the time. So that's the recording system that we use. In terms of Power BI, it's an internal cost to us, and we have developers, we have ICT colleagues that are dedicated to the sort of, if you imagine you've got the Mosaic side and how that technically works, and then the development side in terms of them being able to produce the reports into the Power BI dashboard. So there'll be different council officers that will deal with that. But they've had a working group, and we've had the update this week that for some of these metrics, such as visits for foster carers, they've already produced a sort of working model, and they're giving feedback just yesterday, and then that'll scale up, and across each of those KPIs we'll be able to do that. But I'm really keen to get that into the kinship space as well. So if we started a kinship assessment, should take a set amount of time set out by the court, and how many days it's taking and what juncture we're at a glance.
Thank you very much.
Any other question? No? Sorry, Robert, would you like to add anything?
Just to say, Councillor, that I think it's this has been an area that I think for some time our performance here prior to, as was stated earlier, 18 months ago, we saw the numbers of carers assessed, the support going in, we just couldn't see the wood for the trees. And I think when you look at some of the feedback we received from the regulator, as Richard had said, it was something that kind of really stood out. And that's why, with all of the activity that we've described earlier in today's session, it's really important that we keep a very robust grip on this. So the question that Councillor Gallant raised, yes, all of those resources are in place for us to quickly deliver in this area, and then all of that information will feed into Joanne's management team regular meeting, which will analyse this, but it will also mean that committees like Scrutiny, for instance, will have information which is readily available for you to scrutinise and really get into the detail of.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Yeah, date of next meeting is on 15th of April. Thank you. The meeting is closed. Thank you very much. Thank you.